Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our upcoming change of the nodes. We are just days away from the nodes moving, and we are going to see some major shifts happening in the world at large and in our own psyche and in what we're impassioned towards, what we're motivated towards, and where we might find ourselves avoiding. The nodes have been Rahu in Pisces and Ketu in Virgo for the last year and a half. And now they're shifting into the Aquarius Leo axis. Rahu is moving from a water sign into an air sign. And if you've been with me for a while, then you know that I've often described Rahu in Pisces as kind of putting a fan in the water and just spraying it everywhere. Well, now he's going to be in his own element, right? Rahu's very airy, very vata. This is where we're exaggerating, blowing things up, really creating a magnified illusion around wherever that node is. So it's going to affect the house itself. And of course, whatever house Aquarius is for you, this is going to be an area that you really magnify and exaggerate and blow up in your mind. But it also has this sort of anxious energy. Rahu is the head, right, without the body. And it's this big mouth, and he's just what more can I consume? What more can I consume? But he doesn't process, he doesn't assimilate anything. And as a result, there's an anxiety of always needing more. That lack of capacity to be sated makes us anxious. It makes us feel like there's something else we're missing, something more we need. And so, no matter how many things we try here, we're going to keep trying more and there won't be a lot of follow through, right? There's nothing to kind of assimilate it, process it, and bring us back. So we keep trying a new thing, a new thing, a new thing, and we're not learning our lessons. And this is that energy that he brings that can be both obsessive and, like I said, kind of bring that anxiousness and that unsettled vibe. Whenever people are running some cycle with Rahu, either in the first house or a Rahu dasha, I always tell them, like, you're not going to feel real confident with anything you're doing. Like you're going to feel a lack of certainty. There's an unsettled nature to it. Now, when Rahu and Ketu are in our natal chart, we have a lifelong relationship with where they are. This is where they are. This is what we have to learn in this world. And our obsessive first node or front node, north node, one of these days the word will come out correct. Um, it's part of us. It's part of where we are. And if he's joined any planets, he's really exaggerating the energy of those planets. And this is part of our natal chart and our existence here on Earth that we've been working through since however many years we've been on Earth in this body. For transits, it's a little bit different because for transits, it's like we have this year and a half and this year and a half cycle to like open up this new karma in this place. And usually we're not as settled with the energy. It's not as much a part of us because it's a transit, but it's also not something we haven't figured it out. Usually in our mid 40s, we start to mellow with the nodes a little bit, and we don't have that with wherever Rahu is transiting, unless he's moving back to the place he is natally in your chart. So if this is a Rahu Ketu return for you, you're going to be moving back to this place, and you're going to have an opportunity to see and feel comfortable with the energy that you natally already work with. It's going to be one of those moments where your nodes are very activated. The nodes are Chayagraha, right? They're shadow planets. Their effect on us is through their effect on the places that they influence. Like I said, whether that's planets that are joined or whether that is the house they're in. They're not seen except during eclipses. And when we have eclipses, this activates those cycles of the transits. When we're running dasha cycles of either Rahu or Ketu, that activates them as well, natally in our chart, as well as the ones transiting in the sky. When we have certain transits where they're crossing into, say, a return for us or a reverse return for us, which for some of us that might be, then we have another chance to look at these shadow energies and see how they're playing in our lives. So if it's a return, it's the comfortable energy. And it's like, it's another round of like, okay, this is that thing I'm doing, with Rahu and Ketu. If it's a dasha cycle, it's going to really focus on the node that the dasha cycle is. So if it's a Rahu dasha on Rahu, if it's a Ketu dasha on Ketu. If it's a reverse return, which it is for me this time, we have an opportunity to put more energy where we often look away. And we have a chance to bring some of the wisdom from the past into the new karma we're trying to open. And so this is a place where we start to balance the hyperactivity of Rahu with that sort of disgruntled know-it-all of Ketu. And we get to bring the wisdom into the future because this is ultimately what we're trying to do. The nodes have been cut. They've been severed, right? They were one being, they've been severed, and they're trying to bring their energy back together. They just don't know how to do it. One is like, all disgruntled and like there's nothing here for me. There's nothing to do here. I already know everything. There's nothing, there's no new interest for me. And the other one's like, everything's new, everything's interesting, but there's no lineage. There's nothing to attach it to. So ultimately, they need to be back together in order to have that fluidity of wisdom from the past moving into new karma we're opening from the future. And it takes a long time in our lives to get there. For many of us, it really takes that third reverse return. The nodes come back to the place they are in your chart every 18 years. So on the half years, they're in the reverse return. So around your mid 40s, you have that reverse return where it's the third time around. Rahu's hitting Ketu, Ketu's hitting Rahu, and your actual capacity to mature with this energy is also raised. Now, if you've already run Rahu Dasha, particularly if you've run it recently, or you've run Ketu Dasha, or you've had a lot of planets and different transits that have affected this area of your life already, meaning like perhaps you've run the Dasha of where Rahu is located or you've in your natal chart, and if this is in Aquarius, that would be your Saturn dasha. If you've run cycles with the planets that are joined Rahu in this place, then those are going to be also points of activation for you. Ultimately, the nodes are shapeshifters. So if they're joined a planet, and they aren't for everyone, right? Maybe Rahu's moving into Aquarius, and maybe you've got nothing there. Maybe you don't have your nodes there. Maybe you don't have any planets there. Maybe the only thing that's been there has been Saturn for the last 2.5 years, and now Rahu's moving in, changing places with him. And so if that's the case, it's just going to really emphasize that area of your life, whatever house Aquarius is for you, whatever area of your life that correlates to, whether it's your fourth house of home and the heart, whether it's your first house of yourself and your identity, whether it's your seventh house of relationships, it's really going to emphasize that. If there are planets there, it's going to emphasize those planets. And the nodes move backwards, right? I'm going to share my screen for a moment so we can see here. And I know for many people, they've been kind of talking about this shift for a few days. Some people use the mean calculation for the nodes, which means it's the average over time of the wobble, because these are chaya graha and they are not seen. They're not graha. They're not these big gravitational orbs that we can always witness with our eyes. They're a mathematical calculation. So people use the mean calculation, which is the average calculation of where they might be and when they're supposed to arrive in the next sign. I use the true node calculation, and so it's going to show when they're actually at that point. So for some people, it may have been a couple weeks ago that they actually changed signs in their forecasting, and that's the reason why they're not in my world view or cosmological view. So this is the 29th of May, and we see from that was 7:37 in the morning. I moved it an hour later, and here Rahu is at 29:52 in Aquarius. So he moved backwards. He moved from the sign after him into the sign before him. All the other planets move forward unless they're in a retrograde state, right? The sun and the moon don't retrograde, the luminaries. The other planets have their retrograde motions at various junctures, Mercury the most frequent. Rahu and Ketu are always retrograde. This can tell us a lot about our karma, right? Because Rahu's really opening up that future karma. Ketu's really helping us like finish, untie, fill that last little piece that we need to finish our karma, what Ketu is. And I'm going to talk more about Ketu in a minute, but I just wanted to show this. So Rahu's moving in here. If you have a planet, this is of course a Prashna chart. So there are no planets here because in the sky there's not going to be any planets here. Saturn switched places. He moved into Pisces. Venus is about to move even out of Pisces. And so Rahu is here all by himself. And there's two things I'm going to say about this, but first I'll just finish this one thought. If you have a planet, let's say at 28 degrees Aquarius, let's say your natal Venus is at 28 degrees Aquarius, Rahu is going to begin his tenure in Aquarius by exacerbating your Venus. Let's say Venus is your seventh lord. Let's say you're an Aries rising and Venus is your seventh lord and you have him in Aquarius in this house of community. Your relationships are already very connected to your group relationships, to your community, to the bigger picture that you're involved in. And now Rahu is focusing on the Venus part. And you might be really hyper aware of your partner in community. Paranoid? Possible. Suspicious. Rahu definitely makes us suspicious because we see things. We think we're seeing the future. We think we're seeing what might happen. And often we are. Often what we're getting the download from Rahu is something that may happen. But it's futuristic in the sense that it's not happening right now. And if it's something we don't want to happen, we often make it happen because of our suspicions and all of the way in which we handle it. We bring it into being. We make our karma that we're seeing that we like foresee and say, this is the thing that's going to happen. We make it happen by our own actions and our own belief in what we're seeing. If we chose to treat it like illusion and we acted different and more grounded in this moment, reckoning with the now, the actual karma that's unveiling in this moment, that might not be the future. It's not portending an absolute future. Nothing in astrology is saying this is the absolute thing that's going to happen to you. We always have our free will. It's showing what the alignments are, what the potentials are, but we are living beings with our own choices within it. We might see what somebody's tendency is, but that's part of being human, is that you have this capacity to overwrite your system programming. You're not a robot and you're not an animal who's just running on instinct. You have a capacity to make choices. And so this is where Rahu can really get us in trouble, hyper fixating on something like your partner, or let's say you're a Venus rising, let's say you're a Taurus or a Libra rising, and it's you that you're hyper fixating on yourself in that thing. Well, it's going to be probably aggrandizing, like, really exaggerating your place. For Taurus, it's the 10th house, so it's going to have to do with their career and their public image. For a Libra person, it's the fifth house, in their creativity or with their children. But it's going to, it's more problematic often when it's fixating on someone else, in terms of how it can affect your brain and the choices you make that you don't have, because you have choice over your own self. You don't have choice over other people, and other people are constantly responding to you. So when we're focusing on ourself, it really changes our own way that we walk and move, and then maybe we feel embarrassed later, but it's a little bit different than when it's your career or your home or your relationship, because the suspicious part of Rahu can really kick in. So I'm going to come back to sharing the screen in a minute, but I don't want to spend too much time there just because, it's like I'm in this little box there. So we'll come back in a minute when we talk about Ketu. But I just kind of want to show that part too. The other part of it I wanted to share. Oh, and actually, sorry, I am going to show it again, because I just realized that the other thing I wanted to talk about while we were here is this thing you might have heard about also called the Kala Sarpa yoga. This is the time snake, Kala's time, Sarpa's snake. And this is a yoga that people have been talking about, again, for a little bit longer than me. And the reason is because it's when all the planets are between Rahu and Ketu. And so they're kind of like sandwiched into this time snake of all of the nodes. It can be similar to the vibration that you might experience during an eclipse, where you feel like you're kind of going through this tunnel that's a little trippy, right? There's this part where it's very like there's a lot of illusion and confusion when the nodes are involved. And when all the planets are between them, it can really affect all of the planetary energies. The reason other people have been talking about this for a few weeks now, actually more than that, like almost a month now, since April 25th, when Saturn officially passed Rahu and Venus officially passed Rahu, is because technically all the planets were in between Ketu and Rahu at that point. There is a school of thought, which I feel a little more inclined towards, which is that unless they're actually in their own sign, it's not a true Kala Sarpa. And so I invited my member group when I talked about this with them about a month ago, and I was like, just look at it, just experience how it feels to you. You might be feeling some of that time snake energy now. And of course, it's only valid when the moon is in between these two. So when the moon is moving out, which of course is going to happen right away, right in this period of time, we have the moon moving into the same sign as K2, and then we can say it's another week. And at this point, Mars is joined too. So in truth, the proper Kalasarpa, as I'm talking about it, really would not even really be more than just, okay, where did I go here? Would not even really be more than just the 29th, 30th, and then we saw, I guess it was on the 1st. So it would be like the 29th, 30th, and 31st that we really have them in their own sign without the moon involved. And then the moon moving out breaks the Kalasarpa. And then on the 6th of June, Mars moves in, and that is before the moon moves back into that snake. So technically, we could say that it's really only a few days that we're going to really truly experience it. But of course, Saturn and Rahu were much closer, right? Rahu was in the very early degrees of Pisces, and Saturn was at 5 degrees. Mars is going to move in at 0 degrees of Leo, and K2 is still going to be here. So if I go to that week later, well, this is the 8th, but look, Mars is still at 1 degree, K2 is at 29 degrees. So there's a lot bigger distance between them. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's important. It's not as important that it has to be a whole sign just to itself as it is that they're not very close to the planets. And the reason is because of what I was just speaking about before. When Rahu or K2 are really close to a planet, their energy attaches to that planet. So even though Rahu has been away from Saturn in terms of not being in exact degrees with him, since before the 25th even, his energy was still attaching and magnifying onto Saturn's fears and increasing our paranoia there and all of those things because of how close they were to one another. This is a bit more distant. So I would say that we could look at this period of time from, the 29th, 30th, and 31st as our first 3 days of like, wow, this is really the time snake. And we could move it forward to when the moon then moves out on June 18th. And these two are still pretty far apart. And we could see this as being one of those moments in time. I mean, let's say maybe even a day because the moon is still at early degrees there, where our time snake is a little bit more in effect, like the 19th of June, until about July 1st, because by then we really have Mars and K2 heating up. And you know what? I'm just going to go right into this Mars K2 conversation, and then I'll go off my screen since I'm going to be here. But this is something that I really urge people to just feel for themselves, because sometimes we get really attached to like the concept someone's talking about. Oh, the astrologer said this thing. I hear it all the time. People come to me with so many paranoid stories about what people have told them. I have this thing. I have this thing. I have this thing in my chart. And I'm like, it's just a phrase if you're not observing what's actually happening. It's saying the word of it doesn't make it. What makes it is your experience of it and your observation of that experience. And so observe what's going on for you in this time period. Do you feel yourself in this kind of warped speed? And the speed is something to talk about because it's a time snake. You feel like you're traveling through a tunnel where time maybe feels like it stops at times or speeds up at times. the node that's leading this operation is Rahu because, right, all the planets are between Rahu and Ketu. And so it's new karma. It's new things that we feel coming forward. And we might collectively feel this like, we're going into the future. And where is Rahu? He's in Aquarius. He's in the sign of the future. There is going to be so much energy around technology. I already see it, right? Like AI is going to have this huge place in universities, and some people are really paranoid about it. And some people, probably make their living off of that and are excited. We see so many content creators suddenly using AI in order to write their content. There's this explosion of it, this obsession, this explosion, this scattered stopping and starting with it. All of that is true. And the paranoia about where it's going to go is bigger than the actuality of where it's going to go. And why do I know that? Well, because that's not where the other planets are grounded entities that are actually showing us something. Saturn just moved out of Aquarius. That was cautious, clear, his own sign, cautious, clear, building towards the future. This is where AI got really established when Saturn was in Aquarius. Now he's in Pisces and he's going to keep on moving. Rahu does not establish things. Rahu excites things and starts things and bursts them out, and then it fizzles because there's not a continuity. Where does Rahu go next? He moves backwards. He's going to go into Capricorn, the old way, the classic way. Put your shovel in the dirt, fear, all of these kind of things. And then into Sagittarius, tradition, lineage. So I don't see it being this, thing that we won't have another ebb and flow of. But the paranoia around it will be for sure immense because it's Rahu, and that's where we get paranoid. That's where we get really skeptical and suspicious in this. And do I think there'll be a lot of scams around it? Absolutely. Rahu is where we're manipulative. It's where we lie. It's where we are shady. And particularly when we see, Rahu's in Purva Bhadrapada to begin with, he's going to move into satabhishak. And I have a whole written report I'll stop here to say about this, where I talk about him in each of the nakshatras and for each of the rising signs. So you can see what Rahu and Ketu are doing in the different nakshatras at the different periods they're in them, and also how it's going to affect you based on your rising sign. What area of your life is this? How is it going to show up for you? So this is a really valuable report. These long transit reports, which we've just had Saturn move at the beginning or at the end of March, we've just had Jupiter move May 15th, and now we have the nodes moving. So these reports have been coming in succession, and this is the final of the 3 that I'll be offering for free to everyone on my email list, radahomeastrology.com. Anyone in my Patreon group, free member or paid member, gets this. I do weekly reports for my tier members of Cosmically Aligned, where they get to hear about every transit, every new moon, every full moon, every time a planet changes signs, Mars moving into Leo, all of that. For their sign, but for these long-term transits that last a year or longer, I do the report for everyone as my gift for being a part of my community. So you can go to either patreon.com, Radha Home Astrology, or again, radahomeastrology.com, sign up for my email list, and you will find out where Rahu and Ketu are in your chart. So here we have him in satabhishak. And the reason I want to talk about him in satabhishak for a minute here before I move on to Ketu is because satabhishak is where we see corruption. It is the 100 stars, it's the 100 physicians of healing, but it's also the eyes of Varuna in the sky. He is the night sun. He is the sun when it's beneath the horizon. And he's often referred to as the god of the waters. His wife Varuni is the goddess of the waters. But he is actually what happens when the sun goes beneath the horizon and all the stars come out and they can see what is happening, all the corruption, the legalized corruption, right? As well as the more like black market corruption. And so this star is really going to be one where we see people kind of jumping on what's happening with technology and the ways in which it's being used perhaps to hack or the ways in which it's being used to spy on people. All of these different things are going to come out when Rahu's in satabhishak, no doubt. But he's also 100 healers. This is the place where we can find the cure for not just what ails us individually, but for what ails us collectively. It's the sign of Aquarius. It's a collective sign, a sign of society. And one of the beautiful things about Rahu being in Aquarius is this focus and obsession on everyone, on fairness, on everyone's okayness, not just these leaders or these nations or these entities that somehow have acquired power, but on all the little people. Aquarius is the sign of the little people. Now, the issue that can come up is that there can be too many groups of little people and not enough cohesion. And that can scatter the agendas and make it difficult for something to actually happen. Because, like I said, Rahu's where we don't always have a follow through. We stop and start a lot of things. So starting all these different, programs or NGOs or different things to try to help, and then we give up. And so this is one of the things that can happen here is there can be too much, too many starts, not enough finishes. But certainly a lot of awareness around the need for people to gather, collect, and take some power back into their own hands. So let's shift over to Ketu here, but let's move ourselves back here to the summer. Oh, and we got right to July 19th, right? The day before these two collide, Mars and Ketu. And this is something that I'm actually going to come back to the screen in a minute because I just want to talk about Ketu before we bring Mars into it. So Ketu is going into Leo. It's important to understand that wherever Ketu is, it's very different than Rahu. Rahu, we want, we're obsessed, we're activated. Ketu, we're like, I've been there, done that. Ugh, no, thank you. Again, transit's different than in your natal chart, but in transit, we're seeing him go through the sign of leaders, Leo, kings, presidents, people in charge, your boss. This is an interesting place for him to be because it brings a lot of energy. We just had him in the sign of Virgo. The details. Everyone's house probably needs a good clean, right? Well, now he's in Leo, and there's a lot of active avoidance where K2 is. And I call it active avoidance for a reason. The reason is because we are not just not paying attention. We don't want to look there. There's a difference between just not really knowing something's happening. You've walked through a room before, you had no idea something was happening. It's it's just not a part of you. Or consciously seeing that something is it's there, but you just really don't want to know it's there. And you just have done whatever you can to just cover it up. K2 can be a little bit like a landmine because he's beneath the surface. His tail, which is the point in which his body ends, points to something, and it points to what's wrong. It points to the thing that makes us angry. Ketu is fiery. So just like Rahu is moving into the air element of Aquarius, Ketu is moving into the fire element of Leo. We got fire on fire and air on air. And he is going to, that is what's wrong with our leaders. That is what's wrong with power. That is what's wrong with the monarchy. And even things like lineage, right? He's going to move into Magha, the nakshatra of lineage, later towards the end of the transit, but he is, a sign that is the sign of people passing the crown from one generation to the next. So lineage is embedded into that. It's not quite the same spiritual lineage as I was talking about with Sagittarius, but it's still present. So get ready to actively avoid, whatever area of life K2's in, but collectively, actively ignoring and avoiding leaders. What does that look like? Well, it can look a lot of different ways depending on what country we're talking about, depending on what entity we're talking about, depending on your job, and what your boss's role is in that. It can be literally ignoring and just moving on beyond them, collectively doing things and just whatever, and not paying attention to who's holding the power. or how they got there or what they're doing. It can also be really fixating on what's wrong with them, but not really bringing it to the surface until something activates it. Well, what's going to be our first activation? It's not going to be the eclipse. The eclipses will come. Now I'm going to go back to sharing that screen. It is going to be Mars. Mars moving in. And he moves in June 6th. Remember, we were looking at it before, and that's kind of what started to break up that Kala Sarpa. But he moves in and he's still far away. He's marching in. Mars moves slower than some of our other planets. He doesn't move quite as slow as Jupiter, Saturn, and the nodes, but he moves about 2 to 3.5 months are his cycles. He spent a long time in Cancer and Gemini, a long time focusing on his feelings, long time fighting over words, splitting hairs. He's ready to be in Leo. He's ready to be in the king's sign, marching in, the general of the army, aye, aye, sir, and walks in to a landmine. Hidden beneath the surface, all the anger, all the disgruntled stuff and hidden stuff of the kings and those in power. I'm just using that word. And whatever area of your life Leo is. And also all of it of the people over here that are now, wow, it's all about us. We got to do something. And we can use our computer knowledge and we can use our collectivism. We can use, the internet as a way to get us together. And that centralized power, Mars is stomping in. And what's he doing? Well, Mars is not hidden. He's not beneath the surface. He's like, throw bombs on it and talk later, shoot the gun, fire now. We'll see what happens. And usually when Mars and Ketu get together, we see explosive activity. There are many moments in history that we can point to where these two came together, that violence ensued. The most recent one was Mars and Ketu were together in Libra. And we had the attack from Hamas on Israel, and then back on Israel has now continuing to attack Gaza. So this is the sign of harmony, right? Libra is the sign of harmony, getting along, good relationships, and this long time, right? Long time, not good relations, long time, lack of agreements, long time, lack of harmony. So even though Ketu just moved into the sign, just like he's just moving in here, there's a lot in each of these places. Every single place in our chart, there's a lot that is already there before Ketu moves in. Ketu's just pointing to what it is. Long time, bad relations. Mars walks in, boom, everything explodes. I live on the big island of Hawaii, and in 2018, this Capricorn K2, we had Mars marched in and boom, the day Mars moved in, lava started spurting out of the earth, like immediately. And that was old lava. It was lava from like a 1950s flow that was in the channel. So it was there before. And we all knew it was there. And there was, fracking going on and all these things, but it took Mars to bring it up to the surface. And that's what happens when Mars marches in. So we can all know that whatever Mars rules in your chart and whatever area of your life Leo is, this is going to be affected for you personally. And collectively, we're all also going to be affected here. This is going to be a moment for all of us that will activate before the actual eclipse, right? We'll have our eclipses happening more like around this time. The sun is getting close to K2 here. I haven't figured out the exact dates of the eclipses here, but it looks like it's about right here. We'll have a full moon, at least a lunar eclipse here. Rahu on the moon and the sun join K2 in very close degrees. This is September 7th. That's a month and a half away from July 20th. So it's kind of like, eclipse will be small change compared to what happens in our Mars K2 conjunction in terms of the sort of initial burst or energy of it, because Mars is so volatile. And we already talked, it's like a fire sign, you know, there's so much volatility there. So we might not be able to see the nodes at that time as we do during the eclipses, but his presence gets really known because of that transit, because of that activation. And Rahu's not going to have anybody transiting, right? Rahu's not going to have anyone hitting him for a long time besides the moon, obviously, you know, in the eclipse cycles, and even not in the eclipse cycles, because the sun is required to be there for it to be an eclipse, but the moon's going to go around every month and hit Rahu and Ketu. But K2's getting this right off the bat, this thing. So we don't even have that much time of K2 sitting there pointing, you know, not even a lot of time to sit there and really point at what's wrong before that happens. So that's going to be a big event in this transit for us. And I will touch on that in my report for people just because it's such a significant aspect of this particular transit. And, you know, this axis has so much to do with power because Leo is the sign of power. It's centralized power and Aquarius is decentralized power. And we're going to be focused again where Rahu is. But Mars gonna make us look where K2 is, you know? And the eclipses always make us look where K2 is. And if you're in a K2 dasha, you're gonna be looking where K2 is. And if Leo is an important planet for you, or excuse me, an important sign for you, if you have a lot of planets in Leo, or that's your rising sign, then that's going to be important for you too. You're going to want to look at that because that's you. That's your first house. And you can talk to your Virgo compadres and say, how was it having K2 on your first house? And you know, Virgo is a very different sign than Leo. Virgo people naturally sort of like aren't really in the limelight as much. For Leo people, it might be a lot more difficult because they're used to being seen. They're used to being in the limelight. They're used to being, it's like a big part of their identity. And so having K2 on your rising is like a self-negating. It feels like you're negating yourself. And sometimes other people don't necessarily experience you the same way as you're experiencing yourself, but our own self-perception is huge. And of course, it puts Rahu in your seventh house where you're really obsessed with what everyone else is doing, what's happening with everyone else, you know, and you forget about your own part and the connections you have. So it can have a really big effect on someone whose rising sign that is. But also, if you have any planets there, you know, if you have your sun there, you have your moon there, you have, you know, it will affect those things. And of course, this is using the sidereal zodiac. So if you have your Western sun in Leo, you know, you probably don't need to panic. It might not even be there at all. So if you would like to know again where all these things are happening for you, where Rahu's going in your chart, where Ketu's going in your chart, and how this is really going to activate you for the next year and a half. These are long cycles, long karmic cycles for you. You can again go to my website at radahomeastrology.com and just sign up for my email list, and you'll be sent it as soon as it goes out to the rest of my email list, and or as soon as you sign up if it's after that. And or you can also go to patreon.com, Rada Home Astrology. If you're a free member, you'll still get access to this particular report. If you become a cosmically aligned member, you will get access to all kinds of transit reports for yourself weekly so that you always know how things are affecting you. Blessings on this transit, and I hope to see you again soon.